Hi, everybody. Good to see everybody here. I think we're getting started a little bit early, which is great because it means that we can have some time at the end for Q&A. So if at any point in the presentation you have any questions, think about those questions, write them down, and then once we're through, then happy to address any of them directly. Also, my co-founder Min is with us today as well. So if you have a question in Korean, you can also direct it to her afterwards, and we can talk about that in the Q&A together. But great to see you. My name's Phil, and I'm the co-founder of a company called Airfoil. Today we're going to be talking about how to make Web3 simple with great design. For a little bit of primer on us, so you just know why kind of I'm up here. Min and I co-founded Airfoil to make Web3 easier to use. We're basically a studio that works on product design, branding, go-to-market strategy, and development. And we've worked with everyone from literally over 100 startups in the space, including some of the folks up there, whether it's Bonfire, Elusive, Euler Finance, Stello, Hyperspace, and many more. And also have worked directly with large blockchains, including Solana Labs and the Near Foundation team, among others. But I want to start off actually by talking a little bit more about why we're actually in this space together and why it matters that we involve design in the products that we build. And I'll start with a bit of a personal anecdote. These are actually my parents. My dad moved to the United States from Iran, and my mom moved from Colombia. And for them, as well as for my entire family, one common thing that I just remember vividly from my childhood was this feeling of injustice. My grandfather, seated there, he had moved from Colombia in the 1970s to the United States, and he was the general accountant of Banco de Bogotá, the largest bank in Colombia. But when he moved to the United States, he ended up sweeping floors in Queens, New York, basically starting his life fresh with nothing carried from the previous experience to the next. And it underscored for me how so many systems in our everyday lives are dependent on the country that you live in, dependent on the people that you're around, and dependent on credentials that don't carry with you. To solve that problem, I joined the co-founding team of a company called Trusted4 a while back that was trying to compete with LinkedIn, basically deriving assessments of what you're great at in order to match you with great jobs. But LinkedIn was litigious. LinkedIn doesn't like when other third parties access their data and went on a spree of suing every company they could to prevent them from building on top of LinkedIn's data and creating this recommendation data that could be used to better match people with jobs. That's the reality of how the internet works today. Systems don't interoperate with each other, and there's so many amazing things we can build to make the world truly a better place that aren't possible because gatekeepers prevent us from doing that. That led me to blockchain, because finally, there was a single identity that you could use across the web. Finally, there's a way to accept funds no matter who or where you are without censorship. Finally, there's a common layer for applications to share data, so you don't have to onboard again and again and again. And finally, there's a way to store credentials that come with you no matter where you are. But unfortunately, this is what that actually looks like for users. And insofar as these are the experiences that people have when they enter the Web3 space, all that wonderful stuff that we want to build isn't actually going to work. Now, the common refrain that I hear in response is that this is just a matter of time. That if you give it a long enough period of time, we're going to sort out all of these kinks. I don't believe we have that time. Because when folks are misusing Web3 technology to promote scams and rug pulls and tokens with little to no value, it results in everyone else backing away from our industry, like how Discord had to remove its Wallet Connect integration, or how Microsoft banned the use of NFTs to gate communities on Minecraft. We stand to lose the single greatest opportunity of our time to build an open, innovative, and free web for the world. And though I'm biased, I would argue it's because we need a mindset shift. Frankly, we need to change our mindset in crypto to care more about design and the experiences that our users actually face. So what is design anyway? Well, Don Norman is maybe one of the most famous designers. He wrote a book called The Design of Everyday Things. And this is a very famous quote about design. Design is really an act of communication, which means having a deep understanding of the person with whom the designer is communicating. Put simply, I describe it as building is about you. It's about the process that you take to build an application that's fast, that's secure, and that's effective. But designing is about them. It's about everyone else. Anticipating what their needs are going to be, thinking about what's in their head as they perceive your application. Design is an act of communication. It's not an act of engineering. And that's precisely why design matters. Because without adopting the mindset of a designer, we can invest all this time and effort into building these products, but they're going to fall flat when they're actually put in users' hands. So in the spirit of shifting that mindset, I want to cover 3 major themes today that I think if we can implement them in all the applications we're working on, we're going to make our industry and the movement that we're building as a whole be so much more robust. And beneath those, I'm also going to provide lots of practical advice, because ideally what I want to see at the end of this time is that there's points from this presentation that you can take and begin implementing in your applications immediately. So let's start with maybe the most important point, which is the importance of starting with why. There's a really, really great TED Talk that I recommend you watch, and it's called How Great Leaders Inspire Action. It's by a guy named Simon Sinek, and he articulates the difference between the way that Apple publicizes its products versus other people through this, called the Golden Circle: the what, the how, and the why. So how would a normal computer company pitch its product? They would start with the what. They would say, we have a computer with 10 hours of battery life, and it has a really, really sharp screen, and it's been beautifully designed, and it feels really, really nice to hold. The how is we hire the best designers, we hire the best engineers, so on and so forth. But when you think about a brand like Lenovo, you can't really think of a why. You can't think of a reason they exist other than to sell you products. But Apple does the opposite. They start with why. They say, we believe that technology should fade into your everyday life. We believe that everything that we interact with should be beautiful and wonderful to hold. We hire the best designers, we hire the best engineers. We just happen to make computers, want to buy one. It's a fundamentally different way of communicating. But it more closely addresses the way people actually think. We identify with movements and ideas that move us. We don't identify with spec sheets or really with the what. Unfortunately, that's what we often see in websites in crypto. A crypto wallet and gateway to blockchain apps. Well, if that's exactly what you'd like, then perfect, it works great. But if you're someone who's new to this, you need to understand why that actually helps you. Discover, collect, and sell extraordinary NFTs. That gets a little bit closer because of the word extraordinary, but again, it tells you what the site does, but not why you should care. Changing that changes your user's first initial experience immediately. These are some examples of some sites we've worked on. Build a bonfire for your community. Now, we could just say that, of course, bonfire is a tool that allows you to generate a creator token. But fundamentally, what do creators actually care about? They care about bringing their community together. That's the why that they can identify with. A humanized ID for the metaverse, which we later explain. Quickly send and receive funds to a human-readable address. Get verified so everyone knows it's really you. Again, going after the why. Not just saying this is a place where you can buy a .soul domain, but saying here's why that address matters, because it's more human. Finally, Stello. Explore Web3 with confidence, and we emphasize the word confidence because that's what people care about. It's not that Stello is a tool that sits on top of MetaMask to warn you before you encounter scams. It's that when you use Stello, you will be more confident in Web3. That's the why. The goal is to get to something that's intrinsically good. It's not enough to say that we're revolutionizing something or that we're changing something, because that isn't necessarily better. We have to say something to users that will make them say, that's obviously a good thing, and I obviously want to be a part of it. This also means straying away from the what in the way that you explain your products. This is Hologram, another example of a site we worked on. Become your digital self. Now, Hologram allows you to take your NFTs and turn them into 3D virtual characters. But the important thing is showing what you can do with those virtual characters, that you can go and play in VR Chat and Nifty Island and the Sandbox. we just happen to use NFT tech on the back end. The technology fades into the background. It isn't the focus of how we advertise products. But second, now that you've convinced your user with the why, you've gotten them hooked, now it's time to make sure that they actually proceed through your application and have a successful experience. And for that, I say the best thing to do is to mind your user's health bar. Now, who here has played like an RPG of some kind, where you're exploring a world, and as you walk through the world, your health bar goes down, right? Because your character gets tired. That is very much the way that I suggest we think about onboarding flows and think about onboarding users in general to our applications. Here's a really good example of this. This is Glow Wallet on Solana. And in reality, this flow could be much, much shorter than what you see on this screen. The way that they could have designed the application is that when you click Create New Wallet, you jump right to this fourth screen right here, but they didn't do that. And why is that? It's because you've already invested lots of time into downloading this application and getting to use it. You downloaded it to your phone, you opened it up, you clicked Create New Wallet, you're going through all these steps, but yet it's providing you nothing in return. It's not providing you any context as to what's going on. So you'll end up at this screen, but then not know what else to do, and at that point, the health bar's already used up. You've used up all of your users' attention, but haven't given them a good reason to care. And that's where those two middle steps come in. In the original version of the app, which unfortunately this is an image, the wallet literally turns and falls through space, and you see creating your wallet, verifying your key, backing up to iCloud, and then you see a screen that says welcome to your new wallet. Think about those as power-ups in the game. When the character ingests them, the health bar goes back up. Now you have more of your user's attention to work with, and you can carry them through difficult flows. This same thing goes for in-app experiences. This is an example of Drift Protocol, a DEX that we designed. Whenever anything's slow within an application, whenever you're seeing that health bar go down because the user tried to do something and it takes a little while to do, show the user updates on that screen. Make sure they're aware that the application is doing its work. It's almost as if you're conveying to somebody, hey, hang in there. Just a few more moments. It's as if you're showing care to the user and not just assuming that they'll stick around. And in even more of a meta sense, it's possible to work this into your tokenization or into your airdrop strategy. This is an example of Blur. We didn't work on this one. It's very good, but it's not ours. Of course, there's a time gap between season 1 and season 2. And so what did they do? They created a community idea map that rewards people for having been early adopters of the product so that they can have a say in the direction of the product going forward. Make sure that there's never a dull moment. Make sure that your user constantly feels as if the application is supporting them. And in the spirit of supporting your users, it's super important to prepare users for major points of friction within your app. So the first point being to make sure that you prepare your users for what I call jumps. So what is a jump? This is an example of an app called Cluster. This is actually running on an iPhone 4. It's a very old example. But it's a social networking app. And in order to share information with your friends in a social networking app, your friends all have to be on the social networking app, right? They need to be in your contacts. But on iOS, whenever iOS requests contact data, this happens. This scary little screen. This is where users drop off. Because all of a sudden they're like, whoa, it wants my data all of a sudden, but where is it going to go? What is it going to do? But if someone clicks don't allow, then your application won't have enough data to give them a successful experience. So how do we solve that problem? Well, we throw in a screen in the middle that says use address book. Inviting friends is simple when choosing them from the address book on your phone. Otherwise, you'll have to type contact info individually. Not only are we preparing them for this scary screen over here, but we're reframing the scary screen. It's not that I want to take your data, it's that I want to help you have an easier experience. And if you just give me your data, then I'll help you do so. This is the Web 2 solution that we seem to have forgotten in Web 3. Because of course, this is what the experience typically looks like. Sign, 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 with no explanation before or after why someone needs access to your wallet and what happens after they've taken that access. This is something that needs to change, and it's something I worry about quite a bit. Because in either scenario, it's not good. Either people click cancel and then don't enter your application and obviously can't use it effectively, or they get used to signing everything and they end up signing away their wallets in the process. Again, this is something that Web 2 does particularly well. This is an example of Reddit. This page looks better in the app. Now, Reddit knows that you're going to have a better experience using Reddit on the application on your phone, but what do? Position it in a way such that the user understands why that action helps them, right? It's not that, please download the app from the App Store. It's, this page looks better in the app. Make sure to frame it as how you're helping your user by getting them to take that action. So how do we do that in Web3 and crypto? Imagine the process of connecting a wallet. One place for all of your collectibles. Never log in again. Access for mobile and desktop effortlessly. Now, you could just say, connect your wallet, but by saying it in this way and by labeling it in this way, you're showing users why it's a good thing for them to take the time to get a self-custodied wallet, invest the time to understand it, and move forward. This is something that's very, very rare to see in our space. And on that note, we can go even further to always give first, then expect in return. The last time that I gave this presentation at BUIDL Asia, I included this example. This is actually of an NFT gallery at the Raffles Hotel in Singapore, where I live. And as you know, if you go and visit this NFT gallery, they want to reward you with an airdrop. And this is the actual page that they give you in order to set up a wallet and get the airdrop. And the last line at the bottom there that's probably hard to read is, send us your wallet address at our website and we'll send you your free NFT. No one is doing this. And that's precisely the problem. In Web3, we assume that our users are going to do the work for us. Instead of us telling them what they can expect and giving them a solid reason to invest time in our products, we're simply saying, give me more and more of your time, and maybe you'll get something in return. My contention is that everything in your product can be reframed as give first, then ask. A good example being Dialect, wall-to-wallet messaging on Solana. Now, with a messaging application, it's not very valuable to you until your friends are actually on it, right? Because you'll have no one to message. So the way that they got around this was by doing a drop of these welcome stickers on Dialect. Even if there's no one to actually chat with yet, the application can give you something just for having downloaded it and begun the process to use it in the first place. And by building that goodwill with users, it then nudges you to invest just a little more time to get some of your friends to actually use the chat app. So even if it feels like you have to ask the user to do something first, I promise you, there's always a way to give the user something first to reward them, then ask for more of their time and more of their attention. Last year at Solana's Hacker House in Barcelona, a few members of the Airfoil team actually built something there called Bloombox that you can see on the screen here. Again, giving first, then ask. So if I want to onboard somebody to crypto and I want to send them a collectible, or if I want to send them some ETH, for example, normally what I would have to do is I would have to go and ask them to go download a wallet, get set up, get their wallet address, go send it to me in a Telegram message, and then finally I could send them the collectible. Now if they're really close with me, maybe they'll do that, but most people, they're like, hey, I don't have the time. How do we solve that? Well, the way that we did it in Bloombox is you connect your wallet and create a box that looks just like it does on that screen. You can then take a link and you can send it to someone else so that they can then open the box and see the collectible. And then they're prompted to get a wallet. So you give them something first, then ask for more and more of their time. This is something social networks do all the time. They give you a little preview of the content within the app and then say, if you want more, create an account. They don't just lock it down from the beginning. It's okay to do that. Now, let's say you've convinced people to download your application, you've given them tons of incentives, now it's time to onboard them to your application. I want to emphasize this because I don't think it's done very often in crypto. It's important to make your onboarding compelling, not just compact. Onboarding is a journey. And it's not just the username and password flow, it's a lot more holistic than that. You first have a landing page, which attracts the user. It explains to them why they should care. It gets them interested in your product. Then you have an onboarding that primes the user. It reminds them of why they should be interested in the product. It gets more information from them. And finally, you drop them at a home screen, which guides the user. But this is how we typically do things in crypto. We throw people directly into the application, and then we have a button at the top right that says Connect Wallet. If you try to click the plus and minus or anything else on this page, it simply won't work. That's not intuitive at all. But most importantly, it misses the point of onboarding in the first place. To hold the user's hand through the process, to explain to them why the product matters, and ensure that they have a successful experience. This is another example of Jupyter Aggregator, which is otherwise a really, really well-designed application. It's really pretty, it's snazzy, it's nice to use, but you get to this screen and you don't know where to go. There's no information. There's no clear help icon if you need to find documentation. And even when you do, it looks like this. It's a Git book with tons and tons, literally tens of thousands of words of documentation. No one is taking the step to actually inform the user why they should care and reward them for embarking on that journey. And worse, when no one does that, that is what your users actually end up using to onboard to your application. So you lose control over your own messaging. All of a sudden, instead of informing people why they should like to move to a decentralized future or the ways in which investing in DeFi can help them, they get to redirect it to content about how to get rich on crypto. So how do we solve this? Well, you don't necessarily need to have a username and password because you can just tell people to get a wallet, but you do need to keep the other part of the onboarding flow, reminding users why they're there. I think Mango does this really, really well. They have a first screen that actually asks you which language is your primary language, which is important, because if somebody goes to a particular protocol and feels as if their dominant language is an afterthought for the protocol, they're less likely to convert. And then it reminds them why they're there in the first place. Why are you at Mango? Because all assets count as collateral, because you can borrow against your assets for other DeFi activities. And beneath it, get started and show tips. So if somebody knows exactly what they want to do, they can click get started and move forward. But if they're a little bit confused, they can be redirected into a place that can provide them that help and support. This is Gridlock, a social recovery wallet that we worked on. And social recovery wallets are a little bit tricky because, of course, a social recovery wallet allows someone to recover their private key by basically having fragments of it stored with other people that you trust. That's not exactly how it works, but that's the best explanation I can give. But that's a new concept. And that relies on you getting your friends to do work, to download an app and become a guardian for your wallet. So this is the onboarding flow we have for that. Inviter is asking you to be their trusted guardian. What an honor. You can help them out with minimal effort and no stress. Sit back, relax, and save the day if they ever get into trouble. We're forcing people to step through each of these screens because they need to know what being a guardian is. If they don't complete the flow, they need to know that they're letting their friend down. We need to use this opportunity in onboarding to ensure that their onboarding is successful, not just that it's short or uses the shortest number of clicks possible. And finally, I've started talking about this a little bit, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Manage your user's attention by reducing visual complexity and focusing your user. Very simple principle here. There should be one focus per page. And I know that sounds hard. Here's why. One very classic psych study, and here's an article from HBR that talks about it a little bit, is called the JAM study. It basically concluded this. You had a grocery store where on one day, sellers had a lot of jams, 60 jams. And on the other day, they had 6 jams on the table. Now, when you have more jams on the table, you certainly get more people to come and look at the jams. But you actually end up getting less sales of jam. Why is that? It's because we have a very limited ability to actually process information in our brains. It's almost like we have a spotlight we can put on stuff, but we can't see outside of that spotlight at any given time. So when we add one more option, we don't add complexity, we multiply the complexity of our applications. Adding 3 options actually increases the complexity by 6x or more. So now that you know this general principle, you'll notice that even on complex screens, like dashboards, like this screenshot of Coinbase, there is always a focus on one thing per page. Can anybody tell me what it is that Coinbase's designers decided to focus on this page? What is the thing that stands out? Anyone in the audience? Buy and sell, exactly. And the number. Because think about it like a spotlight. If you haven't gone to buy and sell, you're not going to have a good experience in Coinbase. So they need you to go there first. But let's assume that you do have enough, then they want you to go to your balance second. They're letting your attention move from here to here to here in basically the order that they intend for you to proceed through the page. This goes for landing pages as well. This is a favorite landing page of mine from the folks at Capital. You get to the landing page and it literally just says, modern companies are built on capital. And then the rest of the landing page information fades in. And at the bottom of the page, no joke, there is literally just a start button. It's a big red button, you can't miss it. But what does that do? It focuses my attention. It means that in every point of the landing page, I'm processing one thing at one time instead of all sorts of different battling ideas. Now, this isn't the way that most apps actually look. Most apps have lots of elements that are battling for your attention that look very, very similar to each other. Why is it that USD, BTC, ETH, crypto, and others are in bold blue? Am I going to be constantly cycling between those options? Probably not. But that's where my attention is drawn to. And my wallet's not even connected, but Connect Wallet isn't even emphasized. So that leads to an overall feeling of confusion when you get to an application. Or this example of port, where items that are text and items that are menus and items that are toggles all use the same fonts and use the same font colors. So it's unclear to users initially what they can click on and what they can't. And then you get to the screen where you actually provide liquidity and you see battling green. You should never see in your application a place where there are two buttons right next to each other that look the same. Because that means that as a user, instead of reading one, then reading the second, I have to make a mental decision. Which one do I read first? And that decision is what knocks the user's health bar down, what causes them to have to do more mental effort, and what leads to them feeling more stressed in the process of using your application. One way to address this is by turning a single page into a flow. So this is an example of Friction, a DeFi protocol in Solana that we worked on. And initially, Friction was like many DeFi protocols. It simply provided you with a list of vaults that you can invest in. You would then have, I think it was like 50 or 60 plus options. You would select between which one you wanted to invest in, and then you would go and deposit. We changed that flow. Smarter returns on your crypto. Okay, we're articulating the why. Vaults are powerful investment strategies. And then we provided an overview of the categories of vaults that you could invest in. Not the vaults themselves, but simply the types of vaults. So instead of choosing between 60 options, you choose between 4. And after you've done that, then you get to a page that shows you all the different assets you can invest and provides you with more information. Reducing the number of decisions users have to make on any given page rather than showing them everything all at once. Sure, that can make your app feel more complex. It can make your app feel, in some cases, more powerful, but it also will repel lots of the users coming to your application. It is okay if this makes flows longer. It is okay if this results in more buttons and more screens. What matters is that on any given screen, your user is making the smallest number of decisions they possibly can. One really innovative example of this that I saw recently is that of the new Ethereum wallet family. Now, you've probably gone through a flow where you've imported a secret recovery phrase before, and you see that it has lots of different boxes on the screen. With family, they actually show only one box at one time. And that's the first time that I've seen a wallet do that in the past. But isn't this so much easier to use? You don't see all of your previous values and inputs. You only see the value and input that you're focusing on at any given time. On that note, in just managing your user's attention, set and follow design rules. The way that I would describe this in general is that everything in your application needs to have some sort of meaning. When a particular color is used, it should always mean one thing. When a particular font is used or font size, it should also mean one thing. The way that family does this is that whenever a user is browsing, the interface is in light mode. whenever a user is taking an action, the interface is in dark mode, which you can see here. When the user clicks send and they go into the send UI, then the background color turns black to tell them that they're in a different experience than the one they were in. Even later in the application, you can notice these same tips. Send ETH and total value are in dark gray. They're labels. They're not anything clickable. They're not anything you can interact with. But meanwhile, items that are values for each label, like the number of ETH or the total value, those are in white. It's to remind the user, this is something that's a label and this is something that's a value. So they don't need to make sense of the interface. The interface is doing the work so that the interface makes sense to them. The final point behind all of this is that we need to make sure that we're prioritizing the number of successful onboardings and the number of successful users, not just the number of users we bring on board. I think one of the biggest mistakes of this past cycle has been raising lots and lots of money, putting tons of it into marketing, but then watching as our users try to use our applications, fail, and leave. We need to prioritize not just the number of people we bring in the door for Web3, but the number of people we keep. Sure, evangelizing goes a long way to doing that, but creating interfaces that make Web3 simple, that explain to users why they should care about it and how it makes their lives better, that's how we're actually going to maximize the number of users that stay with us over time. So here's a quick summary of some of what I talked about today. So feel free to take a picture of it if it's helpful. But I wanted to just close off by saying that I'm always so encouraged coming to these events and hearing about all the amazing things that people are building. And we want to do our part to help out in any way that we can and to pass on any of the wisdom that we've learned across these past few years working in this space. I am optimistic that we can figure this out and we can get this done, but I think we need to change our mindset. But at the same time, it's totally something that's possible to do. So thank you so much for all coming here today and for listening to me talk. Really appreciate it. And please feel free to stay in touch on Telegram, Twitter, or anywhere else. Thanks so much. Do you want to do Q&A? Or? Sure. Sweet. Does anybody have any questions that I could address or my co-founder could address? Yes. Thank you. Yes, that's a great question. Just in case anyone couldn't hear it, some users, especially pro users, they expect a higher degree of complexity, and how do you deal with that? I would give two general responses. The first thing is around personas, right? So when we design a product, we're thinking about a particular user in mind, and so if a product is being designed explicitly for a power user, and we're okay with it not being accessible to a broader user base, that's a valid design decision, right? It depends on what we want to achieve. And so in those cases, I think it's okay to have a little bit more complexity if you're very sure that that's the right user to be designing for. In other cases, and I know this is a little bit harder to build, it can be helpful to provide people with various modes or with customization. So for example, even when using like Binance's desktop trading app, they have a lot of choices that you can make between an easier mode that hides some screens you may not otherwise need to see, reduces the amount of visual complexity, and a more advanced mode where you can even select where panels are on the screen. So I think that offering the user customizability is important, but at the end of the day, the North Star has to be, who is my user, what do they want? So if the user really, really wants more complexity, then give them more complexity. But if the user base is broader than that, I think oftentimes it is more helpful to go for the lowest common denominator than it is to go for the pro side of things, but then risk alienating the mass audience. Yes. Thank you. One more quickly. Yes, that is always a tricky situation. So, I mean, for users, when they're getting started with an application and they just see a bunch of wallet options on the screen, that's a place where they often drop off because they may not see a wallet they recognize, or they see Coinbase Wallet and they think, oh, that's Coinbase.com, and they don't realize that it's not, right? Um, I think that the best thing to do is do what I mentioned earlier with preparing users for jumps, which is to, within your application, basically say to the user, hey, you're about to see a screen with a lot of options. Either choose the option you recognize or go for a different option. And I'll tell you that even in one case with some of our Solana Pay work, a way we got around this is we created a screen that said, do you have a wallet or do you not have a wallet? And if you had a wallet, then we sent you to a screen to pick one. If you didn't have a wallet, we would create this like full screen modal that was just like 5 screens explaining what a wallet is and why you should care, so that we hid the complexity away. And yeah, it was one additional click for people that already had wallets, but it allowed the dApp itself to control the experience in a much bigger way. Awesome. So I think I'm at time, but that's a way to connect with me on Telegram up there. And thanks so much, Erica, for having me. I really appreciate it. I'd love to. Amazing. I'll be back. Yes.